If you're watching this video, then chances are you're good at maths. In fact, you're probably very good at maths, good enough to the point you insist that you're really not that good. But you will never be great at maths. Now when I say great, I'm talking great like love me, love me, love me. And I say this with such certainty because it has nothing to do with you. I believe that there will never be another mathematical great, and I believe this for 3 key reasons, starting off with a rather weird one. Yeah, it sounds bizarre, but we really are suffering from success. We have created too many branches of maths, and we know too much about every single one of said branches. And this, in my opinion, is the main thing stopping everyone today from being a great mathematician. Because to be great, you can either make lots of sizable contributions across many different fields, or you can make an absolutely huge contribution in just one field. But now, as we discover more and more, the latter gets harder to do. The fields are already so well developed that there isn't a lot left to discover, and all of it is just super complex. Think about Euclid, right? He wasn't exactly a one-trick pony, but I think you'd be hard-pressed to argue that his greatest contribution wasn't geometry. The Elements stood as the geometry textbook for literal millennia. It wasn't really until the time of Riemann and Gauss that people began to consider Euclid's work incomplete. Now, I don't want to hate on the Elements, but objectively what he did would not be impressive if it were done today. All he did was correlate some theorems, all of which could be understood by a high schooler, structure his work properly, as in he started by establishing axioms and logically argued results from those axioms, and threw in some diagrams to aid understanding. But it's because he was the first to do all of these things that he is held in such high regard. Before him, people knew some facts about geometry, but the systematic and rigorous way in which Euclid presented those ideas and their proofs was brand new. That makes Euclid a great mathematician. And as soon as Euclid did that, nobody else could. Nobody could become great just by formalizing proofs. Over time, more and more of these one-hit wonder ideas were taken. The first that springs to mind is Descartes coming up with the Cartesian plane, the wonderful union of algebra and geometry. It doesn't matter if Descartes is a great, the point is, that's one more idea that we, the people of today, can't become great for having. At this point, I don't think there's a broad enough or a deep enough gap in our understanding of the subject that one person could realistically fill. It's just not going to happen. So that leaves making many smaller contributions as our only possible path to greatness. This was Euler and also Gauss's claim to fame, although their smaller contributions were still quite significant in the grand scheme of things. Focusing on Euler, his achievements include popularizing the notations of f of x, e, and pi, his identity linking complex numbers to trigonometric functions, which gives rise to arguably the most beautiful mathematical statement ever, solving the Basel problem, linking the Riemann zeta function to primes decades before Riemann was born, inventing the totient function with which he generalized Fermat's Little theorem, straight up starting graph theory, coming up with the first topological invariant, and much more, all whilst having this fire portrait. You can do all that today. There isn't enough time to learn enough maths to be at the forefront of everything, to be able to solve problems, generalize theorems, and invent entire fields. I mean, look at Andrew Wiles, for example. He solved Fermat's last theorem, something which everybody before him, including Euler, had failed to do. To do this, he proved the Taniyama-Shimura conjecture, which links elliptic curves to these things called modular forms, which I don't understand, but they sure do look cool. Now this is a pretty significant contribution, but it took him 7 intense years of struggling to get there. The man was over 40 by the time he finally proved it, which mathematically is ancient. Typically people peak in their 20s, maybe early 30s. Now because that took so long, Wiles didn't have enough time to prove enough things to become great. And I think that's probably the best example I can give for my first point. Now to move on to the second. Yeah, I guess we all just have too many friends, you know? Well, maybe not all of us, but I hopped on Arxiv one day, which is this really epic website where you can find millions of academic research papers as they're published. Now I went on there one day, clicked on maths, and started scrolling the most recent papers. And in the first 10 I saw, 5 had multiple authors. Within the first 20, 10 had multiple authors. And within the first 30, 18, so a majority, had multiple authors. I've got the rest of the graph drawn out to 100, and in the end, over 2/3 of these mathematics papers are joint efforts. Now, collaboration is not a bad thing. In fact, it is a great idea in light of maths getting more difficult. But it means that it is harder to build a reputation. And this isn't just a maths thing. If you read articles about scientific discoveries these days, I feel like more often than not, the discoverers are reduced to a group of researchers from insert institute here, and maybe they mention some actual names in the penultimate paragraph. But even if this wasn't the case, it is simply harder to obtain the great status if you're always working in a group. Now, the one glaring exception to this rule is a certain Paul Erdős, who dropped a generational 500 plus joint papers and holds the record for most papers published by a mathematician ever. He is the extreme, where he collaborated so damn much that he became renowned for his collaboration. He also released over 1,200 unsolved problems, so this man was just a constant hustler. But other than him, I defy you to give me a great who collaborated as much as the modern mathematician does. There's nobody. Almost. I would argue that Ramanujan was a great mathematician, and a lot of his great output came from his collaboration with Littlewood and Hardy. It was with Hardy that he worked on his asymptotic formula for partitions, and the trio developed their circle method thingy that has been used to attack the Goldbach conjecture. But I would argue that part of his greatness, and not a small part at that, comes from his individual brilliance. This can be seen in particular in his original letters to Hardy, which contained a lot of equations that he independently came up with despite having no formal training whatsoever, which by that point in history was unheard of. So once again, I'd argue that if his only work was his collaborative stuff, he would be an equal to Littlewood and Hardy, and not the legend that he is. So that's that slightly sketchy point done, now onto the final one. I hate giving AI more attention as much as the next guy, but in this case I do seriously believe that if AI continues to develop at the same rate it has been these past 5 years, we're not going to have any more great mathematicians ever. And I'm not saying this just because some big tech company is telling me that it's the case, we actually have some evidence for once. That being, of course, the OpenAI disproof of the unit distance conjecture, an 80-year-old problem courtesy of a certain Paul Erdős. This is not some super niche contrived problem, this is like a real problem that real people have been trying to solve. Following this, a real human called Will Sawin improved the lower bound of the disproof, but the AI was still the first one to solve the problem. And that's just a little concerning and scary. Although maybe this is just an anomaly. If you want to keep up with the impact of AI within maths, I highly recommend you check out this channel called Easy Riders, where Mr. I don't know his name, the random matrix theory PhD student, tests out loads of AI models and tries to see if they're any help with his PhD ideas. And the conclusion seems to be basically no. They can take information you give them and reformat it and link together pre-existing ideas sometimes, but the models that the public can access aren't going to be writing his thesis anytime soon. So maybe we're safe just for a little bit longer? Who really knows, but my point here is that AI can actually solve difficult problems before any human can. I hope this entire video is wrong. I hope that somebody watching will become the next great mathematician and Euler 2.0 and restore the subject to its former glory. If you're planning on doing that, here's what I think it would require. One way to do it would be to solve a humongous problem, as in the Riemann hypothesis. I literally don't think any other problem will do. Because Grigory Perelman, right, he solved the Poincare conjecture 20 years ago, and I feel like he hasn't really gotten much recognition. He hasn't sort of ascended into superstardom, as you might imagine when you solve a millennium problem. The Riemann hypothesis, on the other hand, is the most famous and important unsolved problem in pure maths right now, so solving that could probably get you into that club of greatness. If it isn't proven by AI first. That would kinda suck. Another thing you could do is invent a new field of maths. I don't really know what that could look like at this point. Maybe you could invent the maths of quantum gravity, or make a more abstract version of category theory. Actually, please don't do that, that sounds like hell. Another thing you could do is call me deluded. Maybe I'm just too impatient, and over time, contemporary mathematicians will gain their greatness status. Maybe Terence Tao will make it into the top 10 greats. I think that sounds highly improbable, but hey, who knows, only time will tell. Anyway, that's all for this video of me just spewing my opinion. Feel free to disagree, let me know if you have any thoughts on the matter, and thanks for watching.